Sarah, do I really need to have a lookbook? I mean, it seems like so much work. Yes. Yes, you do. My name is Sarah Kogan. I'm a film designer and world builder. I've worked on major motion pictures down to indie micro budget features and everything in between. And I am here to help teach people about film design and how it serves your stories and what you need to know to be able to plan for it accordingly so that you can create the films that have been living in your dreams and in your mind's eye. We live now in a very visual world where lookbooks are now becoming the necessary tool to pitching your film or your TV show. So today we're going to look at a snippet of a training I did on lookbooks. And you're going to look at the emotional driver behind storytelling and filmmaking and what we need to think about, right? The first kind of three big elements. And then we're going to look at why a lookbook is important and serve those three elements of filmmaking so that you can actually get your films funded and tell the stories that you've been longing to tell. So let's jump in. The science behind how we tell stories. So people listen to how you say it over what you say, and they care because of your why, right? So how you say it over what you say. And this is becoming really important now in the film process and the success of our careers as filmmakers. So in film, right, it's a visual art based in literature. And so what does that mean, right? How do you say it over what you say? And we care because of your why, right? How does that relate to film? So first, the how is that's the art of our filmmaking, right? That's the creativity and the craft or the film design, which is the world building itself, the visual storytelling language, the soundscape. It's all of the aesthetic choices that we make for our films, right? Because we could tell them in a lot of different ways. The way we choose to tell them is our mark as filmmakers. It's your directorial mark if you're the director, and it's where our uniqueness gets to come out. That's why the how is so important. The what is the literature. That's the script, right? That's our foundational piece. Everything is based on and comes out of the what. And we can't move forward until we understand what the story is we're telling. And then how do we best tell it, right? And then our why is, that's our purpose. What is it that we want people to know or feel or walk away understanding when they watch our film? And these questions are the same questions that we get to ask when we're making our lookbooks. Again, what is the story we're telling? Why are we telling this story, right? Why does this matter? Why is your voice the unique voice for this? And what, then how are we actually going to tell this story in a way that serves what the story is and why we're telling the story? So I always like to call this the filmmaker's equation, right? How you say it over what you say multiplied by your why gives you your finished film, right? So just to kind of give it a visual, that this is a way in which we can think about how we say it goes over what we say, and it's amplified by our why and gives us our film. And in this case, as we talk today, the foundational work of crafting a lookbook and what goes into that process. So, your how, as I've kind of mentioned, is your film's design. And I often talk about 4 layers of storytelling within film. There's the first layer of your storytelling, which is your script. That's our story type. That's where is it an action, a thriller, a rom-com? We only can learn that at the story type, right? The layer 1 at the script. The second, right, that story could be put in multiple different worlds. We've seen that. We've seen love stories or thrillers set in fantasy worlds, sci-fi worlds, contemporary period, right? So the world building layer, the second layer, this 3-dimensional world in which we create for our film, that is the piece that is all about the world building and our genre. And so where we experience, is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? Is this world around us contemporary? What is the world we're in, and how does it serve the story? How do the characters relate to the world around them, and how does that tell the story in that moment in and of itself. And then the third layer of storytelling is where we take that three-dimensional world and we're going to compress this into a two-dimensional image. This two-dimensional image, right, that's our filming process itself. That's what we do when we shoot movies. We take a three-dimensional space that we've found, we've crafted, we've added and embellished it. If it's a contemporary film, we've taken characters who are specific to that story and put into a narrative environment wearing clothing that is meant to tell a story. And all of that then gets compressed into this two-dimensional image that then becomes our film. And that is all about revelation of form. How do we see and experience the body of our characters and their world through the camera lens, right? So the cinematography, that is, but I like to think about it more of how do we get to see and experience the world? Because when we ask that question versus what does it look like, we're actually asking it in a way that serves the story, right? How do we need to see and experience these characters? And these become important as we start to go through our lookbook. Then the fourth storytelling layer in film is the editing process or the assemblage, right? And how are we building relationships between sequence to sequence and building the visual tension that way? And how are we relating the images that we capture to one another? Because that's extremely important. And so these four storytelling layers, right? The layer one is the what, right? And layers 2 through 4 are our film design itself. And this is where we get to start talking about what goes in our lookbook, because it's based on those three storytelling layers. It becomes this element of like, we need to start to explain this to people. Here's what we want to put in a lookbook. Or here's what a lookbook is, pardon my language, lookbook is, right? It's a visual treatment of how we are going to tell the story, right? From the overall mood of the film, its world, the main players, its cinematic style. We can talk about with the editing, films that have similar editing styles or show an editing reel, right? There are ways that we can kind of start bringing people into what our real vision is. So why do lookbooks matter? There are 3 reasons why lookbooks matter. There's one for the investors, right? Getting people to buy into and invest in your creative vision and to trust you, right? Then there is the creative process itself and how that further enhances the quality of your film. Then there is the actual practical brass tacks of what this process does for you as a filmmaker. So the important breakdown, right? Like, let's break down this importance. So first, for investors, a well-crafted lookbook says, you can trust me with your money and I won't get you fired or bankrupted. I love this. It's from my friend Carlo. That's why we have to create these. We have to prove to people that, look, if you give me $100,000 to make this film, you will get your money back. Or you can at least trust that you've put it in really good hands. And think of it this way too with lookbooks. If a picture says 1,000 words and we have 24 frames per second or more, we're saying 24,000 words per second, right? So if we take that, right, think about that in terms of what are we saying with every page in our lookbook, right? The other reason why lookbooks are important is because people skim information. And so if you've noticed, if you go online and you go into a website, odds are you skim it, right? You hit the titles, double check, make sure you want to read it or invest in it more. Then you go back and read the information. And now more than ever, that is the go-to mechanism for investors, production companies, producers. They're going to skim over your lookbook and you want to be able to grab their attention and say, hey, this is worth looking at. This is worth actually reading about. And so there are ways to actually set up our lookbooks so that they are clearly laid out in a way that gets people to be interested and invest in your story. And so lookbooks with this skimmability, if done correctly, make it very easy for people to skim the information, pick up the most important stuff, and then go back to key elements that they might want to read a little more about. And then now more than ever, it's the creative vision of a filmmaker that gets them greenlit.
It used to be if you had an amazing script, we could talk our way into making a film. And 15 years ago, if you had a great script, odds are you could get greenlit. Now it is even more important in order to cut through the noise and the sheer volume of the world of creative content, that we are able to express ourselves visually in a way that is compelling and exciting, even on paper, right? And even with still images. And so we want to be able to capture people with that as a way of hooking them into our creative vision to further our project. And then creatively, you start working through all the creative kinks in advance, right? So it saves you time and money later down the road because you've explored things. It also allows you to plan properly and budget properly, which is really important because oftentimes indie films don't realize what they need for the world, specifically for the world building aspect of a film. And that tends to get under budgeted because it hasn't been properly thought out. And so by going through and going, what do we really need? What are the most important storytelling moments in this film and why? We get to then go, this is what we need. So when we go to our investors, when we go to talk to people about where our funds are going to go, we actually have a clear plan. And then the other thing that this does is it tells talent. And when I say talent, I mean more than just cast. Oftentimes we hear talent as cast, but if you hire the right department heads, they bring with them to your story a ton of resources. And just to use myself as an example, I also own a costume rental business in New York City. So when I'm hired on a film, I have the ability to bring in thousands of dollars, hundreds of pieces and thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars of free costumes for us to utilize, right? So it's a value that I bring to the table. And so when you're hiring department heads, a really solid lookbook will enroll people in your creative vision, and it will help you find creatives that align with your creative vision, as well as those that can serve your story, more readily. And so that will help with that. So, and then from a practical standpoint, it jumpstarts your creative conversation before you start hiring, right? So what happens is when you have a lookbook that you've really thought about and you've really started thinking about as a director and as a creator, what the stories you want to tell and how you want to tell it. And by no means does this mean you're locked in. You get to be flexible in this because the creative process, especially on the paper side, is very much about exploration. And so when you start by having this in advance, you're already coming into your creative conversation with your department heads with them knowing, right? So you've now hired your people. They already know before they even start pre-production where you want to go visually and the story that's in your mind's eye. So they're able to start looking into the world and seeing what's out there. And this creates a shorthand for you during production where you don't have to then be a part of a gatekeeper for every single decision, right? If you are bottlenecking your decisions of, I don't really know if this is what he wants, this is what the director wants or not, I have to wait and ask. Suddenly, especially if we defer these choices to 2 weeks out before our production starts, there's so many decisions to be made that we are unable biologically to be able and cognitively to be able to decide on every single thing. And so because we get what's called decision fatigue. And so by doing a lookbook in advance, we actually are allowing ourselves the opportunity to make decisions sooner so that we can make the decisions that are right for our film versus saying yes because we have no time for anything else. And then it also, like I said, it allows you to delegate, right? Which allows you if you're the director or the producer, to focus on what you do best. And that's the ultimate goal of getting to production, where as a director, you're focusing with your cinematographer and your cast on what the performances are and the images that you're actually capturing versus worrying about the details of, did we get the character right? Have we thought about the next location and what it means to the story? We want to have all those questions answered in advance. And so doing a lookbook really helps you to start sussing out what are those questions that we get to ask and what do those spaces need.
Thanks again for checking out my video. I love sharing this information with you. If you would like to learn more about lookbooks and how they can serve your story and help you get funded, reach out to me at www.sarahcogan.com and sign up to have a coaching session with me. We can go over what you've done and I can give you tips and pointers, or I can help you actually build it yourself, or I can build your lookbook for you. We can kind of figure out what you need and customize a plan just for you. So again, reach out to me at www.sarahcogan.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will talk to you soon. See you next time.